We have a full house. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate all of you coming out. We have an amazing announcement to make today. It's about addressing our homeless crisis right here on the ground in Oakland. You're going to hear from Mayor Libby Schaaf, Logan McDonnell at the Bay Area Community Services, and Juma, the Executive Director of the Oakland Fund for Public Innovation, as well as see a short video that includes one of the recipients of our Shallow Subsidy program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Oh, after that, the mayor is going to make a few acknowledgments to our community partners, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. You'll put your hand up, I'll read it off the chats, and we'll go from there. So with that, thank you very much, and Mayor Schaaf. Looks like she had a momentary issue with her camera. Okay, give us 1 second here to see if the mayor can reconnect.
I apologize, but here I am back again.
Mayor, you are now sideways. You're just gonna have to turn your phone.
Is that any better?
That looks nice and horizontal to me. If I can get confirmation from anyone else. Okay, it looks good, Mayor.
All right, thank you. I apologize. I'm still in Washington, D.C., about to come back to Oakland in just an hour or so. So I am not working with my normal equipment. As the mayor of Oakland, I know I join so many Oaklanders in believing that housing is a human right. It is a basic human need, and that homelessness is the moral outrage of our times. This Shallow Subsidy demonstration project, we believe, will prove one of the most effective means to prevent and rapidly resolve homelessness in Oakland, and that it will be a proof point for expanding our ways of resolving homelessness, our homelessness response system, and hopefully eventually changing federal policy with regard to housing choice vouchers, a program that truly should be an entitlement. We know that every night, thousands of Oaklanders, our elders, our children are sleeping on the streets or are one economic emergency away from losing the housing they have. This Shallow Subsidy program shows that with ongoing support to bridge the gap between what people earn and what the rents are, we can stabilize families, prevent homelessness from happening in the first place. We are so thrilled that this demonstration program will touch the lives of 200 households, thanks to the generosity of our funders and our partners. A shallow subsidy means that we will provide the gap to bring someone's rent burden down to no more than 50% of their income. That is a less expensive or less deep subsidy than the traditional Section 8 housing voucher program. But we believe in an expensive housing market like the Bay Area. This is the type of intervention that can rapidly stabilize families, keep them from losing their housing, and allow them to build their income to a moment of self-sufficiency. We are very pleased to have an incredible evaluation partner in this demonstration project so that we can build a body of evidence to advocate for the types of policy changes that would make an intervention like shallow subsidies permanent and part of our homelessness response system. Of course, that is being led by the incredible Margot Kuchel at the Benioff Homeless and Housing Initiative at UCSF. And this evaluation will also touch base with the evaluation that Oakland is also conducting with our guaranteed income demonstration. We believe that these are both pieces of a puzzle to provide the stability, because homelessness and income insecurity are two sides of the same coin. This demonstration project was also inspired by the racial equity analysis done on Alameda County's homelessness systems by Everyone Home. In looking at what is driving the racial disparities in homelessness rates and what interventions could do the most to narrow that racial disparity gap, the proposal of shallow subsidies was one of the most recommended outcomes that came from the study that Everyone Home recently completed, with the great assistance from Oakland's own director of the Department of Race and Equity, Darlene Flynn. The reason that shallow subsidies is seen as something that could close that racial disparity gap is that traditionally, our homeless prevention programs, like our incredible Keep Oakland Housed, is a one-time emergency assistance program. But when it comes to racial disparities, we know that racism is not a one-time emergency. It is an ongoing barrier to both housing security and income that allows people to remain stably housed in the long run. And that is why ongoing subsidies to help people stay securely housed are needed as we look to advance our homeless response system, and frankly, a system that allows every family to go to bed at night without the fear of losing that most basic human need, shelter. It is such a pleasure to introduce to you some of the partners that are making this initiative possible. I'm very excited first, though, to show a brief film that highlights one of our shallow subsidy participants. If you can share the film, thank you.
When we moved in here, me and my daughter, we shared a lease. So when I became ill with the COVID, of course, she had to move out. You know, it took me a while to recover. So she kind of like got out and got on her own. You know, she wasn't coming back. It was hard to find someone to share the lease with because I was sick. No one wanted to move in, you know. So I was falling behind on bills and rent and things, trying to, you know, maintain it by myself.
We're excited to introduce a new concept of the shallow subsidy, which will target certain folks in the city that aren't being covered by our existing programs.
The Shallow Subsidy program started here in the mayor's office and partnered with the Oakland Fund for Public Innovation to provide shallow subsidies, rental subsidies, to the most housing insecure families in Oakland, right? With a real focus on equity and really targeting our most vulnerable communities, neighborhoods, and residents.
This pilot prevents homelessness by paying a portion of a person's rent every month for up to 18 months.
What we're hoping to do first and foremost is prevent homelessness, displacement, negative health outcomes, but we're also really hoping to learn something, to learn enough that would advocate, to allow us to advocate for better policies that would protect low-income households.
I don't know what I would have done. I can't pay the rent by myself. I only receive income of Social Security.
If this is one of the solutions of many that we can provide to wrap around our communities to end, quite frankly, the housing insecurity that's happening here, then we should drive it forward and really think about how we convert something this effective, this cost effective, from, quite frankly, from pilot to permanence or pilot to policy.
Wow, that was so well said. Thank you, Juma, for ending on that beautiful, inspirational note. I now want to introduce someone who's responsible for actually implementing the pilot, who is actually selecting the families that are going to benefit from the Shallow Subsidy initiative. And that is Logan Mcdonnell. He is the Associate Director of Programs at BACS, Bay Area Community Services. Logan.
Thank you so much, Mayor Schaaf. Well, let me just start by saying that in a shallow subsidy, because there's not enough money and resources for full subsidies, that our main focus is closing the gap and trying to really have a focus on equity for those who have been historically disenfranchised. Families are being displaced, they're being separated from their communities, and we want to keep them here in Oakland. We're focusing on neighborhoods whose rents have increased by upwards to 90%, and we're not duplicating paperwork or adding red tape. We're using applications that we got right through Keep Oakland Housed. So we're not trying to add more layers to this. We're really just trying to reduce barriers and help people get in, because that's what's needed. And I think that there's been a diffusion of responsibility in regards to the equity lens that's needed to focus on the proper neighborhoods that have experienced gentrification and displacement by huge numbers. I mean, we're focused on people that have an experience of homelessness in their lives. They've paid more than half of their income on rent. They're making less than 30% of the income, and their neighborhoods have high rates of gentrification. They're in food deserts, and there's bad equitable outcomes in regards to education, in regards to health, in regards to criminal justice system, everything. So what we're trying to do is really just give a big focus on reducing that and actually having some nice equal ground that we could all operate on and have a diverse Oakland, which is what Oakland is known for. One thing is that we're trying to get the rent burden down to 50% or lower. And these are people, this is an 18-month pilot, and these are people that they need to stabilize, and they just need some stability in their life, because the traumas of poverty and the traumas of having to find other resources so you can survive, you can't get anything done. These are people that were able to focus on getting licenses, certifications, education, all these different things that they'd usually have to use their time to just get another job or have to figure out another hustle so they can survive and so their families could thrive. And what we really want to do is cross this cultural Rubicon where programs like this don't seem new and they don't seem fresh. This should be the status quo. We need to have a better focus on equity, and that's what I'm so proud of this program for. And I think the three main takeaways that I get every time I wake up and think about it are equity, housing retention, and most of all, economic mobility. Getting out of survival mode and getting back into thrive mode, and actually being part of the community and being proud of the community that we're all in. It's not lost on any of us at BAX and in the city of Oakland that over 70% of Oakland's homeless population is Black, but we only make up less than 25% of the general population here. So this is a program that's transforming lives. We appreciate all of our partners. These are people that would have been displaced, and instead they could focus on the things they need to focus on to thrive and to be members of the community that they grew up in. So with that, I'd really like to introduce Juma, the Executive Director for the Oakland Fund for Public Innovation.
Thank you, Logan. You're gonna make it hard to follow, man. Wow, really hard to follow. I wanna really start off by thanking our mayor for always being fearless and centering equity and some of the work that we do and all the work that we do. I wanna thank our partners and our philanthropic partners for this, for having the guts to really dig into this pilot. My name is Juma Crawford, and I lead the Oakland Fund for Public Innovation. And we engage private partners to innovate, test, and scale ideas to enhance Oakland. And this Shallow Subsidy program, this pilot, is one of those ideas that we believe ensures and allows all Oaklanders, Oaklanders in our most vulnerable communities, to stay rooted in our city and thrive in our city. We know that government cannot do it alone. We need private donors, we need philanthropy, we need public-private partnerships that are focused and that are centered on research and evaluation to pull this all together to prove veracity of our pilots. And we believe this pilot can be one of the solutions that we know can solve some of the issues we're seeing in our most vulnerable communities here in Oakland. Oakland is a city that is unique like no other in this country, quite frankly. And if we can pilot innovative solutions here, we know we can scale them in other cities in California and beyond. Oakland is the test for America in many ways, we believe, and I know that this work can continue on. our call to action, my call to action from the fund is to drive philanthropy and other folks, and particularly some of our local government, to continue to partner, to continue to think of ways to have impact at scale, and let's take risks with innovative solutions that can help our most vulnerable communities here in Oakland. Thank you very much. Love to hand it off to our mayor,
Great.
Mayor Schaaf.
Thank you so much, Juma, and thank you so much for your inspirational leadership of the Oakland Fund for Public Innovation, a unique nonprofit that innovates on the edge of government using private resources to improve public outcomes. So I want to recognize the many partners, in addition to the ones that you just heard from, that have made this initiative possible. And of course, I want to start with Mark and Lynn Benioff. They provided the seed funding to allow us to design a pilot, a demonstration project. And without that seed funding, we would not be here today. Other huge investors are the Crank Start Foundation, and then of course, the partnership of the Oakland Housing Authority and particularly Alameda County. Those two public organizations have been huge contributors on our advisory council and are really a critical piece of the conversation about how we move this from pilot to policy to permanence. Now, we do have two partners here with us today that I'd invite to share some brief remarks, starting with Madeline Adams from Kaiser Permanente, followed by Janasha Higgins from the Tippingpoint community. Madeline.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf. I appreciate it. I'm Madeline Adams from Kaiser Permanente, and I'm really happy to be here today to hear about all this great work. Kaiser Permanente's mission is to provide high quality, affordable healthcare services to our community, everyone in our community. And what we know is having safe, stable housing is a key to making sure that you have good health. So we do our best to invest in various projects that can help people be housed in a dignified way. So we were really happy to be a part of this. We know also that we have to work on policy, and this was an absolute winner when we thought about turning, as you said, a demonstration into policy. And so we're really thrilled that we were able to be a part of this. And we certainly want to make sure that people stay housed and not get to homelessness. And that is very important when we look at the percentages of what you need to be able to have stable housing and take care of yourself and your family. We've been pleased to support the Shallow Subsidy program, and we're really looking forward to the evaluation on this so we all can learn and this can be implemented, hopefully, in a scaled approach and impact many more people. Thank you. And I'm turning it over to Janasha.
Thank you, Madeline. Hi, everybody. My name is Janasha Higgins. I am the Learning and Evaluation Manager at Tippingpoint Community. For over 15 years, Tippingpoint has been fighting poverty in the region by identifying and investing in interventions that help people get out of the path out of poverty. And so homeless has been, of course, a key path to that. And so we believe it's very essential for Tippingpoint and other funders to use philanthropic dollars as risk capital to help test new ideas such as this Shallow Subsidies pilot, because we know that our dollars alone won't end homelessness. And so we definitely want to invest in new ideas, new thinking, new solutions to help keep 200 Oakland residents housed. We need longstanding nonprofit partners to help keep the deep knowledge in the community. So Tippingpoint's grantee partners, such as Bay Area Community Services, is helping to make sure pilots like this are running seamlessly and that the money is equitably supporting those that need it most. We also need best-in-class partners like UCSF to help evaluate this pilot so that we can elevate some of the best practices and learn from them. And then, of course, we wouldn't be able to do this work without the scale of the government. And so it's our hope that one day that this pilot will no longer be a pilot, but that it's a way that thousands of other people across the state of California can stay housed. And so with partners like this, we believe that we can truly do that work. So thank you, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be a part of this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Janasha. Well, there you have it, folks. You've heard from all of our principals, and we'll put a link to the video in the chat. It'll also be on the mayor's YouTube page. And so if we want to open it up for questions, we can see who raises their hand, and we can also read in the chats and call on folks. See, I'm not seeing hands.
Someone asked, are we taking questions? I think Michelle.
Yes, we are taking questions. Sorry.
So that's an affirmative.
Thank you.
All right.
I was wondering if you've given any thought, in addition to providing financial subsidies, which I understand are going to be going directly to the landlords, have you given any thought for those families that are chosen to participate? Will there also be the equivalent of informal patient navigators to help participants connect with other things that might help them stabilize, like vocational training, educational opportunities, appropriate government benefits, help getting their kids IEPs, attending IEPs in schools, taking, care of the entire world that traps people in poverty to help them step out, in addition to filling the gap of the rent that's missing?
I think that's a question for Logan, because the participants will receive the general supports of Keep Oakland Housed. It's just in addition to the Keep Oakland Housed supports, they'll also receive the rent subsidy. But while those additional supports are not part of this particular demonstration project, I think it would be helpful for Logan to explain the other supports that Keep Oakland Housed provides, and then maybe for Margot to explain what are the different measures of wellness and stability that the evaluation will be measuring.
Yeah, thanks. So one thing that we're very wary of is we don't want to increase any more potential barriers. So we'll never make it something so they have to participate in certain levels of programming in order to qualify. But at BACS as a whole, we do have all these sources just as far as IPS, which is vocational rehabilitation. And we have wellness centers that we provide workshops, one-on-ones, clinical support, anything that you can name really. So we do really encourage people to take advantage of the programs that we have to offer as an ancillary support system, and just a daily meaningful activity that they could be a part of and stay occupied, so we don't have to worry about maybe the potential of even violating a lease agreement, because they have things to do during the day that actually keep them thriving. I could also tap in Jonathan Russell, because he's been doing this a lot longer than me.
No, I think it's a great question. And I think it's that nuance between, we're testing a specific intervention here that needs to be a part of a whole matrix of supports. And so while this program doesn't include patient navigation, whole person case management, we believe that that's a part of what our community needs. But it's not a requirement to participate for this particular program. And so I think we really believe in linkages as an agency. So making those other supports available, but really focusing on, especially from a demonstration perspective, this is my way of passing to potentially to Margot, we really want to look at this intervention itself and be able to evaluate it on the merits of what does the subsidy itself do in comparison to when we don't have it, to really drive towards that policy and permanence. So it is very laser focused in that way. without denying the need for linkages to other supports as well.
And are you also doing anything, since you're gathering data, to include specific communities that are especially underserved? For example, communities where, tenants are hard of hearing, seniors, people with limited English proficiency, to see how this type of intervention specifically affects those sub populations?
Yeah, I'll just start that and pass to Margo in terms of the way in which to evaluate that. Yeah, the thing that's most unique about this subsidy, I think, is how targeted it is, right? So as you heard earlier, we've really selected those zip codes that we know are most economically depressed, and in many ways targeted by many of the factors that are making our communities of color most vulnerable and pushed out. Which includes, I think, a lot of folks that also have significant amounts of disabling conditions. So we're certainly gathering all of that demographic data, and the data shows so far that the overwhelming majority of those that are being selected from the eligibility lottery are falling squarely into these populations and these community members, including, for example, Black women, which are over 50% of who's been selected alone, which we know are the most evicted class in our nation, for example. So we're definitely drawing that. I think our targeting criteria are showing that it's going to the community members that are most at risk, and definitely will be evaluating the nuances of the individual households and some of those additional issues like disabilities that you mentioned and how this affects that.
Yeah, we are collecting data on issues like housing stability, both whether people fall into homelessness or whether they're displaced and need to move out of Oakland, whether they need to move multiple times. We're looking at how this changes, if it changes income, and then various measures of wellness of the whole household, physical health, mental health, engagement in school, and other important measures. The study is likely not big enough. It takes a very enormous study to be able to look at differential impacts on different groups. But I want to emphasize what Jonathan says. The individuals in the study are all representative of the groups that you've mentioned. They are overwhelmingly Black women, but also people from the Latinx population, so monolingual Spanish speakers, people with disabilities, and other categories that, older adults, other categories that are particularly at risk in this housing crisis.
Thank you, Margo.
Can I just add one other kind of historical context? 5 years ago, for every one person that we were moving from homeless to housed, we were seeing 2 to 3 new people becoming homeless. And at that time, we did not have a single program to prevent homelessness from happening. At that time, a coalition of us put together Keep Oakland Housed. And again, I want to acknowledge many of the same partners that are funding the Shallow Subsidy initiative also funded Keep Oakland Housed, which at its time was the very first program specifically designed to prevent homelessness. But it is just one-time help. It's a case manager, it is legal assistance if needed, and it is that one-time emergency payment. And so this Shallow Subsidy is being layered onto the Keep Oakland Housed intervention. But I just really want to commend Oakland for really leaning in to homelessness prevention in a way that wasn't being talked about at all just 5 years ago. Next question. Thanks, Justin, for letting me put that in there.
Yeah. And in the chats, there was a question about when the pilot started. I believe that was July, and how many people are involved, and that's 200 families as of now. The next question from Natalie Orenstein is, what is the role of the landlord? Do they have to agree to charge fair market rent or a specific rent amount? Who wants to take that?
I'm happy to jump in. So this is designed to reduce rent burden. So we're definitely targeting the assistance to the household to reduce their rent burden. So naturally, the majority of the subsidies are flowing towards directly to whatever their housing obligation is. I want to make really clear too that being a leaseholder is not a requirement of this program. That would, as Logan said, be a barrier. Many folks are in housing situations where they have a housing obligation to pay that might not fit into a formal lease structure. We're not requiring that. We are supporting households however that obligation shows up. So I want to make that clear that while the default majority of the payments are going to leaseholder situations, it's not a requirement to participate in the program, because we know a lot of housing insecurity and folks that are at risk are also in living situations where there's not, I have this 12-month lease and it's with a landlord. So we also are making really clear that that there is some decision making on the household's part of how they want to receive that subsidy, whether that's directly to the landlord to where they're making a subset of the payment that's now less, or in cases where there's more comfort and it makes more sense based on what that obligation to pay is on their part, where it goes to the household and then they're managing that towards their rent. So it's really the obligation of the landlord is none other than to receive the subsidy. And there is also not a requirement that they have a certain lease arrangement. We certainly are managing, as we do in all programs, that there is a rent reasonableness, I think, which is if folks are in a real burden place where they're paying much more than they should on rent, but there's not some specific cap on what their housing costs can or can't be. We don't want to penalize the potential recipient based on their housing situation with a landlord in order whether they can participate or not.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think the next question is for Juma. It's what is the total cost of the funding the program? And can you break down some of the major investments?
Yes, the total cost for this pilot is $3.4 million. And we had some extremely generous funders who really wanted us to test and try to scale this thing. So that's a huge shout out to Tippingpoint community and folks there, Janasha Higgins and Sam Cobbs, and Debbie Kosky, Mark and Len Benioff, Kaiser Permanente, Yvette Radford, Madeline Adams, Catherine Boyle, and we had significant gifts as well from Crankstart. Jackie Dowding and her team at Crankstart really backing us to sort of pull this thing off the ground to see if we can provide a solution, a cost-effective solution to these issues. I won't get into the actual amounts, but that's the breakdown of funders. The total amount was $3.4 million, and we're really, really grateful to all those funders for having the guts to test something that we believe is a solution.
And I'll just add that the average rental subsidy per month per household is just under, it's between kind of $750, it's a little north of $750 a month. So that's a direct cost that's going to the landlords, that times 200.
Okay, great. The last question I see in the chats is when do we expect the next point in time count to Alameda County to conduct their next point in time count?
Are we allowed to call on Carrie? Because it is coming up. Or Jonathan, I don't know if you have that information handy. It's coming up very soon.
Yes, absolutely. Carrie Abbott with Alameda County, and the point in time count is scheduled for the last week of January. This year it'll be on January 25th, which is a Tuesday, and we will be recruiting widely for volunteers. So thank you so much for asking.
And we have another one, maybe for Margot. Are you including a control group so you can measure cost effectiveness that occurs when homelessness is prevented compared to when it isn't, in terms of things like people circling through ERs, et cetera?
Great question. Because this program has funding to include 200 households, but there are many more households who meet the rigorous criteria for this, we are doing what's called a natural experiment. Our evaluation won't deny anyone the resources that they otherwise would have gotten, but we're taking advantage, as it were, of the fact that there are many households who qualify who aren't going to be lucky enough to be in the 200. And so we are both enrolling individuals who are lucky enough to get the intervention, and those who are placed on a wait list until more funding happens, or who are just not, but in every other way are similar. That way we will be able to compare those who get the intervention to those who don't. And this, we think, will allow us to make a better case to policymakers about the true impact of this innovative program.
And when do you expect to publish results? How long after the 18 months that the people are receiving money, or rather the landlords are receiving the money?
We're going to be following people throughout and interviewing them frequently throughout. And when the program ends, we'll be prepared to have preliminary results, and then we'll follow them for another 6 months to see the longevity. But we will be prepared to report out basically in real time, as long as everybody has completed their time period.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a request if any Spanish speakers wanted to address this or could make a statement. If not, maybe we can come back to you. I believe that was from Pilar.
Yes, I'm here. Praying for somebody speaking Spanish.
The wonderful project director running the evaluation is a bilingual, bicultural Spanish speaker. She unfortunately is taking a child to a physician's appointment right now, so couldn't be here right now, but I'm sure would be happy to speak to the Spanish media in Spanish.
That would be great if we could set that up today.
I'm sorry, Pilar, about the unexpected absence, but her little one needed to be at the doctor's.
I can give you just a few sentences right now, if that's okay. Este programa de Shallow Subsidy es para prevenir la instancia de personas sin hogar. Va a servir a 200 familias que va a recibir casi $800 por mes para la renta. Y creamos que este apoyo va a terminar el miedo para familias sobre las viviendas. Es muy importante que todos tienen la seguridad de una casa, una vivienda. Y es importante que las familias tienen esta ayuda para familias a quedar en la casa. Creemos que esto es una política que necesitan hacer para todos. Lo siento que este programa ahora es solamente para 100 familias, porque yo sé que este es un derecho. Vivienda es un derecho para todos. Housing is a right for all. Anyway, hopefully that was something.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, with that, I'm not seeing questions, and we're at the end of our time. So I want to thank all of you for coming together and making this pilot happen. And thank you for our reporters and friends in the media who are covering this today. We'll be putting out full press release in about an hour or two with a link to this. All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin, for all your hard work. Justin and Jonathan, thank you.
Thanks, Juma.